Hello, my name is Jim Suozzo. I'm with the Ridgewood Guild. I'm the co-chair this year, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Greg Mitchell. He's a documentarian from Nyack, New York, and his movie Memorial Day Massacre is in our film festival this year. I'm very happy to have it. Welcome, Greg.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, now we're familiar with each other because you were kind enough to submit your film to our festival last year, which actually won Best Documentary in our festival.
All right, thank you.
It's called Atomic Cover-Up, which is a pretty amazing story. And I actually saw some similarities between your current movie, Memorial Day Massacre, and Atomic Cover-Up. Can you tell us a little bit about your current movie?
Yeah, well, of course, I guess they both involve death and cover-up, but quite different in a lot of other ways. But Memorial Day Cover-Up is basically a story about an incident that is not much remembered today, even among labor and union people. It happened in 1937 on Memorial Day in Chicago, and it was a time of great labor strife, labor strikes, union strikes at big industries, General Motors and Ford and other places like that. And so there was a strike at steel companies around the Midwest, and one of them was in Chicago, Republic Steel, which was a major steel company and steel plant in South Chicago. And so they started the strike, and there was some violence, just some heads getting knocked around and injuries and things like that. So the strikers called for a picnic on Memorial Day and said, bring your families and children, and we'll have a picnic, and then we'll have a march towards the plant. There was no sense they were going to be able to do much more than that, but march towards the plant, show of strength, for solidarity for Chicago and so forth. And so that's what they did. And what happened, and we can talk more about this, but in the nutshell, they were met by hundreds of police, and somehow shots were fired by police, even though the marchers were not armed. And next thing you know, the marchers were retreating, and police were shooting live bullets, and then also going through the crowd and clubbing them. And so there were dozens that were badly injured from being clubbed. There were 40 who were shot. 80% of them were shot in the back, and 10 died within days, that day or within days. So it seemed like an open and shut case in a way. Trigger happy police getting carried away, something set them off, and they actually fired live rounds at retreating marchers, including women and children. Children and women were both hurt and or clubbed. But the newspapers, which were of course the main form of media at the time, almost from small papers right up to the New York Times, basically bought the police story that there was kind of a riot going on, and the marchers were heading for the plant, and they were going to take over the plant, and the only thing that stopped them from overrunning the police and overrunning the plant was that police had to fire on them. And this was bought by like I said, almost all newspapers. It's sort of like we see today in some cases where we have police violence and police brutality or police shootings, where the initial story is it was self-defense, or for whatever reason the police had to beat someone up or shoot them, and then the truth comes out. And today it sometimes comes out from body cams and dashboard cams, which were unknown then. In the case of 1937, what happened was there was one newsreel cameraman at the site from Paramount News, which was one of the leading newsreel companies, kind of forgotten now, but who filmed, almost the entire incident, including the people running and getting shot, and then the aftermath, where police were not really giving first aid to people and kind of just tossing the bodies around into police vans and things like that. So this was caught on camera. And then you might get to part two of the story, which was that Paramount then suppressed the footage, made a newsreel using the footage, and then buried it. And it was only because a well-known investigative reporter exposed this and wrote about what some of the witnesses had actually seen. And the footage was then subpoenaed and by a congressional subcommittee. And the committee then, about a month after Memorial Day, held widely publicized hearings in Washington in which they interrogated police and the marchers as well, and screened the footage for the first time. So the footage was then screened. It was said to be the first time film had ever been entered into evidence in Congress, the very first time. And then the press could do nothing at that point but report sort of more of the truth and what was on this film. And so there was kind of a reversal then of the public opinion about the whole incident. It didn't help the people who were killed and maimed, but so that's the basic storyline, and then we can talk about the after effects, what happened in the weeks and years afterwards. But it was a sensational incident at the time, long forgotten, and so I'm sort of exposing it or re-exposing it again with both the incident itself. You will see the footage for the first time in a long time, and in new 4K. Quality, also in slow motion. So it's kind of an analysis of film, a film analysis, but also with all this history, labor, and the ferment of the time, which it's good timing today with a new surge in labor organizing today, with much more union activity than there had been in many years.
Yes, the images that you pulled together were really very well done, I thought, and the story, which you really summarized very well there, is just a compelling one. So I hope everybody comes out. We'll be showing it on Wednesday, April 26th, and in a block with two other documentaries, by the way, which are also very well done.
Now the film is 27 minutes, so it's you might say it's a long short or sure, but whatever. But it's pretty substantial. But at 27 minutes, it goes by quickly, and it is actually getting its. You're actually getting the world premiere, I guess you might say, but it's then getting its broadcast premiere just a week later on PBS on May 6th. And it'll be getting its premiere from the PBS station in Los Angeles, and then will be broadcast around the country in the weeks after that. Also, it's going to be streamed. So if you know people who would like to see the film who don't come out to the festival, it will be streaming free on the PBS for several weeks after May 6th. So it's kind of a national premiere and national airing. It'll also be on local stations around the country, and but I can't give you a schedule on that. It'll be in the days after that.
Right. Well, hopefully everybody can go to pbs.org or their local PBS station and look that up, because it's well worth watching if you're not able to see it at our festival. So thank you for that. Now, a little bird told me that there's also some kind of book involved, and I know you've several books already. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Greg?
Yeah, I've written a companion volume to the film, which I didn't intend to do, but since the film is getting wide exposure on PBS, and there'll be people will naturally, or some people will want to read more about it and more background. So I've put together an oral history. The first oral history of this incident. And so you've got dozens of people who are either eyewitnesses or reporters at the time who covered it, people who were there, plus other people who were involved in the story, kind of surprisingly, including sort of well-known writers, Studs Terkel, Gore Vidal, even Ayn Rand makes an appearance. So, but it's an oral history, so it's very easy reading. It's very people can digest it pretty easily, and it's very lively because it's personal accounts and witnesses and so forth. So that'll be up on Amazon, in another week or so, 10 days.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, as you know, with our festival, we have professionals like yourself. We do premieres, we do features, but we do student films as well as other people just starting out in independent film. What advice would you have for people just starting out, perhaps documentaries for the first time?
Yeah. Well, I was just starting out just a few years ago. As you mentioned, I've written about a dozen books, primarily a book author, magazine writer. I've been a magazine editor and so forth. I've been involved with films for many years as an advisor. I've been interviewed for films, and I've been a official advisor for films. In fact, I just got word today that a film that I'm a close advisor on just got a big NEH grant, and they're going to go ahead with a major film. So I've been involved with films for a long time. About 9 years ago, I co-produced a film about Beethoven's Ninth Symphony and its global impact, both culturally and politically. And we did hundreds of screenings of that around the country and around the world. And I was sort of deeply involved in it, but I was not the filmmaker. So it's really just been about 3 years since I started writing and directing films myself. You mentioned Atomic Cover-Up, which was my first film. And then my second film actually was the First Attack Ads, which talks about Upton Sinclair's race for governor of California in 1934, which also was broadcast on PBS, hundreds of stations last October. And now this third film, also with a big PBS, actually PBS is a co-producer, so they're deeply involved in this film. So it's a pretty good track record for the past couple of years, but I didn't really have any experience writing and directing my own film. So it shows you can do it, no matter what your age or experience. I think of course, the big issue is money, but in my case, the films have all been archival. And so I haven't done any of these. All of these films have interviews with people, but it's basically picking up interviews that have already been done and using audio. So there's all the films have incredible footage, but you don't see talking heads. Now, one thing, I'm not crazy about talking heads, even though I'm a talking head right now, but it's very costly to film interviews. A lot of people out there know that, who've tried to make films. It's very costly. You generally have to get a sound man. Now, anyone can go around with a camera and just, maybe record shaky, badly lit footage, and the sound is bad. It'll just look like something that someone put up on, TikTok or YouTube, and, and it doesn't look professional. It's not going to make any festivals or win any awards or anything like that. So if you try to do something that's truly professional and it involves interviewing people, talking heads, and so forth, it gets very expensive. If you're going to do a kind of a story where it's more guerrilla type, or it's more, you're going to cover something, kind of more of a news story or something where you expect, one of the charms can be, you are there, and it's you're covering something. You don't expect PBS audio or video or anything like that. So, and if it's archival, it's even better, because there's a lot of cheap or free footage out there from the National Archives and the Library of Congress, and things that are public domain. Tons of photos, great photos are public domain. So it can be done. And the other thing with archival is that you can get a sense out front how much something's going to cost. So you have to buy some footage from an archive, and you find that they give you the price per second. So you say, okay, this is going to cost $2,000. This is going to cost $600. This is going to cost, $1,500. And I think I can do this. The price, it's not going to be 50,000 or 100,000 or something. It's going to be 10,000 or 5,000 or whatever. So I think there's a lot of films that can be done by people who are not film majors, don't have maybe that much experience, but you have to just keep in mind the cost. You have to keep in mind what kind of film you're making, how much you have to pay your editor. Maybe you can edit it yourself if you have experience. All these costs from rights you have to secure, often public domain or fair use, but still it's very difficult. So, but I think, as I've shown, it is possible to kind of start maybe a little later in life and make films if you have a good sense of what you need and what it costs and what's professional. If that's an important thing in this day where there's so much video out there and so many things that people can see and post, and it's all wonderful that there are all these outlets, but on the other hand, you do want to look like you know what you're doing, and something looks professional.
Well, your films certainly do, Greg, and I appreciate your work, and thanks so much for sharing your film with the Ridgewood Guild International Film Festival.
Well, okay, happy to do it. Thank you for talking to me.
Appreciate it.